Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of The Inside. I am Babler Jonathan. Today we're going to be analyzing a political idea presented by four political parties in 2016 as the solution to the political, socio-economic and security challenges that Cameroon is facing today. The idea is championed by the UPC, Manidem, CPP, PAP and MP3 political organizations and many civil society organizations including Stand Up for Cameroon and Mothers of the Nation. Mothers of the Nation is an arm of Stand Up for Cameroon civil society platform. Meet our guest. In some few seconds, we're going to be analyzing political transition. Our guest today is one of the most outspoken and courageous politicians in the Republic of Cameroon. She is also a civil society leader. Kamer Edith is the national president of the Cameroon People's Party, the Stand Up for Cameroon. She's also a member of Stand Up for Cameroon Civil Society Platform and Mothers of the Nation. Kamer Edith, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as usual. And hello to all of the viewers out there across the nation of Cameroon.
All right, we're going to start with some issues that were in the news this week. And one of the issues is a decision of the Minister of Territorial Administration, Atanganji Paul, who decided that all persons who will desire to purchase machetes, axes and iron rods in the northwest and southwest regions of the country for the next 4 months will have to seek for authorization from the divisional officer of his or her area, and of course will have to present some identification documents including the national identity card and even the phone number, and will also have to show proof of the fact that the person is having a plantation or has a plantation that is for farmers. And those who want to buy iron rods for building will have to show building permits and other documents to the sellers before the right direction at this point in time.
Bringing peace back to the people, I'm talking about Equinox Television, Equinox Radio. You do everything to find out from people what can be done for a return to normalcy. That's what I meant by bringing peace back to the people. As for the dialogue, many people would notice
Hello, you're welcome to The Inside. I am Babler Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we'll take a look at the stakes of the national dialogue announced by the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, in view of finding a way out of the socio-political and security crisis hitting the northwest and the southwest regions of his country, and of course other problems, notably socio-political problems affecting the country. And consultations are ongoing. The Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph Janguti, has been receiving civil society, political and of course religious leaders within the framework of consultations ahead of that event. But there are several questions on the upcoming national dialogue and the possible outcome of such an event, and there are equally questions on the organization of that event convened by the President of the Republic of Cameroon. And this is coming 3 years down memory lane after thousands have been killed by the Anglophone crisis. Thousands, hundreds of thousands have been displaced internally and externally. Hundreds of villages burnt down and lots of destruction in the two Anglophone regions of the country. Meet our guest in some few seconds. After the President of the Republic announced the holding of the national dialogue to find a way out of the Anglophone crisis, he made a statement, and that statement has been interpreted as to say the dialogue convened by the President of the Republic is an international conspiracy. And of course, Justice Ayapol Abine is our guest in this edition of The Inside. He is a former member of Parliament, a former member of Cameroon's lower house of Parliament. He is a former Supreme Court judge. He is a lawyer. He is also involved in humanitarian activities. Thanks for joining us. Barrister Ayapol Abine, you're welcome.
Jonathan, I should begin by thanking you for coming here with your team. We're glad that you spare no chance to see how we can contribute towards bringing peace back to the people. You are welcome.
Bringing peace back to the people through the national dialogue announced by the President of the Republic, do you think is the right step towards the right direction at this point in time?
Bringing peace back to the people, I'm talking about Equinox Television, Equinox Radio. You do everything to find out from people what can be done for a return to normalcy. That's what I meant by bringing peace back to the people. As for the dialogue, many people would notice that I've made virtually no statement, no comment on the speech by the President of the Republic of Cameroon. Somebody interviewed me on the telephone some 2 days ago for a McJohn's newspaper, and I made a statement that to me the grand national dialogue is a non-event. It's a non-event for several reasons. I do not know if it is my level of French that is not good enough, but I thought that the President of the Republic made it very clear that he's going to carry on the war, because he threatened that those who didn't drop their arms would face the security forces, the military, or the law. And I am on the spot. I know that a day or two to the day he made his speech, the military presence in Buea, I'm not elsewhere, I can only talk for Buea. The military presence in Buea went up at least 20 times. And since the speech, that stepping up has more than doubled, which only helps me, which helps to support my view that the President was not really talking about dialogue. The President was uttering a threat that this is my next step. A day after the speech or so, the woman was reportedly shot on the doorstep of the church at Bamboo. 10 people were killed on a farm at Mutengene. Yesterday, one of the farms invaded in Munyenge was my cousin's farm. Of the 7 people killed, one was his worker. We say one because that is confirmed. The rest ran in different directions. God alone knows if they are still alive. So we cannot make an authoritative statement that way. Nobody would be calling for dialogue and stepping up military operations at the same time. It is also to the knowledge of everybody that I think 2 or 3 days ago, he called a meeting, he convened a meeting of the National Commission on Decentralization. You cannot be calling people to come and dialogue, and you are going on with your policy as nothing is going to happen outside your standpoint. And that standpoint was repeated in his speech. He said with emphasis that Cameroon is one and indivisible, and that whatever he calls national dialogue is going to be within the constraints of the Constitution, which is decentralization. Cameroon is a unitary decentralized state. So if a man has made such an authoritative and direct statement, a statement that is not, ambiguous in any way, how can we be excited about what we call dialogue today? As far as I see, I said it and I'm repeating, I didn't want to comment directly on the speech, but as far as I see it, dialogue is something farcical. It is not intended to solve any problem. I believe that the government of Cameroon, under President Biya, has opted for the military solution, and that is the only thing that is on his table.
The military solution, which is denied by those close to him, which is denied by those close to the ruling or in the ruling party, the CPDM, who have continued to emphasize that the policy option of the President of the Republic as far as resolving the Anglophone crisis is concerned is dialogue and not the military solution. And they simply claim that he has been kind enough to call on the separatists, drop your guns, come out of the bushes, we'll even receive you on the dialogue table, and so on. But those who will continue to carry guns, they are the ones to face the military, to face the heavy arm of the security and defense forces.
Those who refuse to drop their arms, that sounds very amusing to me. Of the 10 people killed in Mutengen, I think at least 4 were children below 12, let's say below 15. They had guns on them. We know that the main policy of the CPDM government is falsehood. They enjoy telling lies. They say just the opposite of what they do or what they intend to do. You cannot tell me that we need peace, that somebody is working for peace, and these things are happening the way they are happening. About 80% of his speech was centered on the Anglophone war. We call it crisis. People are using tanks, they're using bombs, and people call it crisis. The Anglophone war. Some 80% of the speech was on Anglophone war. And the dialogue is intended essentially to resolve the Anglophone war. At the moment we are talking, of those who have appeared before the Prime Minister, how many of them are Anglophones? We just tolerate the word Anglophone for the better understanding of those who don't know the other names. How many of them are Anglophones? Look at the political parties. SDF has never missed words saying that SDF is not an Anglophone party. So I don't count SDF as an Anglophone party, though headed by an Anglophone. Of all the political parties that have appeared before the Prime Minister, which of them is Anglophone? Of the personalities that have appeared before the Prime Minister, how many of them are Anglophones? Let me say this thing once more in clear and direct terms. There's nothing called Anglophone General Conference that can resolve the Anglophone problem in the absence of Anglophones in the diaspora. I have said and I keep repeating that we are two. Anglophones on the territory and Anglophones outside the territory.
The President of the Republic indicated that they too will put in their own contributions, and the people who are being sent, even though most of them are from the CPDM, they are close to the government and so on, who have been sent to Europe, to the United States, to meet with the Anglophones who are in the diaspora.
The President of the Republic was very emphatic that is working with the foreign countries where Anglophones in the diaspora are. And that sooner or later they will be brought to justice, those Anglophones who are supposed to attend the dialogue.
They even called on the United States to do something about those who are in the U.S.
Thank you. Now, we know that they issued something here they called international arrest warrants. They are pending. Do you think that any serious man would say that he's going to invite those people who know there are warrants pending against them into the country? I know some personality who one time past was the president of the International Junior Chambers, the Junior Chambers International. He came into this country and was bundled back at the airport. He was sent back from his own country, though he had represented the country at the Junior Chambers International as the international president. Now, the people who formed the interim government are in jail in Kondengi. So, who are those Anglophones who are going to come from the diaspora or from the leadership to dialogue with the president? So it's very clear, as far as I understand, that Anglophones in the diaspora are not going to take part in the so-called dialogue. And that as long as they don't take part, nothing is going to work. Nothing. I keep saying nothing. I am here in Buea, one of those who were abducted in 2017. Even as a Supreme Court judge, the highest Anglophone Supreme Court judge, were abducted and kept for close to 8 months. I am here in Buea. They hold meetings about the so-called dialogue. I only watch on the media. I only hear on the media. Who are those Anglophones who are going to be at the dialogue table? And if, as I've said, 80% of the speech was on the Anglophone war, and the Anglophones are marginalized even at that level, who are those who are going to talk about Anglophones? I have said, and I want to repeat, that there are two people in Cameroon, if I can call it Cameroon. People of the Republic of Cameroon and people of Southern Cameroons. A dialogue, properly speaking, which can resolve the Anglophone war should be a dialogue between those two people. Earlier on today, I published how there were debates in the Southern Cameroon Assembly in 1954. We were a state. There are monuments showing that we attained independence on the 1st of October 1961. We're a state.
But today, those two entities no longer exist because we have the Republic of Cameroon and then we have the Northwest and the Southwest.
Let me develop this thought. There is a provision of law in an international instrument which makes even the plebiscite of 1961 unlawful. It was not within the law, even that plebiscite. That international provision of, that provision of an international legal instrument provides that the trustee, in this case Great Britain, could not take the trust territory and divide it. It had to be treated as an entity. The mere fact that 2 plebiscites were conducted is against international law, and so it was, though done by the United Nations, the UN went against its own law, and that plebiscite itself is null and void. Even if the plebiscite were valid, voting to attain independence, to achieve independence by joining the Republic of Cameroon was just declaration of intent. It is as if we have agreed to do joint business.
And there's no legal backing to the agreement.
When we have agreed, we now go and sit down and state, for capital, Aya will give so much, Jonathan will give so much, employment of workers, profits will be shared. That is when we are together to do a business. Just agreeing to do a business, just declaration of intent. And that's what was done on the 11th of February 1961. Which is to say that the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 1608-15 of 21st April 1961 was not complied with, and because it was not complied with, even if the plebiscite were valid in international law, that non-compliance means that the 2 Cameroon have never been together in law. It was de facto, just as a matter of fact, but not in law. And that's why when people talk about secession, I just laugh at them. Even lawyers, they talk about secession. There's nothing like that. Until we can prove that there was legal joining, this was reduced into writing, and there is, that's just exactly what I was coming on to, to call the name. But it doesn't exist. And therefore, what is the issue between the 2 peoples? The people of the Republic of Cameroon and the people of Southern Cameroons, now called Ambazonia by some people. Can we come together and palliate this legal lacuna? That is to say, sit down and say, now there was a mistake, but from now on, this is our agreement. Is that possible? If it is possible within the law, can we do it? If it is not possible, what's the next thing? And this is not an issue that can be resolved by the use of arms. That's what people in Yaoundé should understand. It can never be resolved by the use of arms. People talking about other human beings that are going to neutralize them as if they are animals. You can never solve this by the use of arms. It is by the use of law.
But that's why the President of the Republic has chosen to convene this dialogue, so that this issue can be discussed.
It cannot be a dialogue convened by him. He is an interested party. There's a common saying that nobody can be judge and party in his own cause. It cannot be him. I have a lot of pity for my school fellow, who is now Prime Minister, Dr. Chief Ngute. I feel sorry for him. I have put him in a very awkward situation. This is not an issue that can be resolved as such. It was the making of the United Nations. The making of the United Nations ended inconclusively. It is now for the United Nations to make sure that things are done conclusively. And I say this on the presumption that the plebiscite of 1961 is valid. But as I've said earlier on, it is not even valid in the eyes of people who are versed with some provisions of international law. Making a separate plebiscite for Southern Cameroons and a separate plebiscite for Northern Cameroons, British Northern Cameroons, was in violation of international law, because the area was entrusted to Britain as an entity, and Britain had no power, not even the United Nations had the power to split it. Recently, even the Nigerian courts disqualified Atiku because he happens to come from that part of British Northern Cameroon that was attached to Nigeria in the name of Saduna province. Just to show you what I am saying, that is the true legal position. Those are things that we should sit down and iron out. If anybody tells you that you can use tanks, bombs, and arrive at the conclusion, that person is misleading you. It is a matter of postponing the solution and shifting the war to our children and grandchildren, and as the case may be. At first, these were issues that were not known by many people. And a few of us we knew said, well, maybe de facto in equity today, talk of equity of the deserted mistress, even if legality was not strictly followed and the people are willing to be together, can it work? And if it is going to work, let us get into a federation. And you know the price we paid. If anybody today talks about secession, is asking for a federation secession? And if a federation is secession, what about those who left the Union by adopting, going back to their previous name, celebrating their Independence Day, anniversary of their Independence Day, 30th anniversary? Who has seceded?
So, to Justice Ayapola Bini, military solution cannot solve the problem. The national dialogue convened by the President of the Republic cannot solve the problem. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It is when we go back to basics, going back to the root cause, which some people are afraid to pronounce and explain. Going back to the root cause. Without that, I'm sure that even a child would tell you that you cannot fell a tree from the top. We are trying to fell a tree from the top if we don't come back to the root cause. And when you do that lumping, the tree is going to grow back. Go and cut the branches of a tree. Come there a few months later, a year or so, it grows back. But if you fell it at the base, it hardly ever grows back. So let us go back to the root cause, which is what I'm explaining, and I've been explaining without any bad intention, just telling them that, look, this is the best way out. And if you don't follow the law, no solution you arrive at can last. If the president is called president of Cameroon, it is because the law says if you fulfill this, that, and that conditions, you will be president. If you are carrying a gun, it is because the law says if you fulfill social conditions and you are a gendarme or a soldier or you carry a gun. It is the law that gives us the positions we hold. And we hold those positions in trust from the people. Principal aim in that NGO is to demystify the law, to explain the law to the ordinary people. I wrote that as just one of the ways I've been writing all the time, explaining the law and pointing out things that are not correct. That's how I wrote that article. Let me call it an article. It's an international conspiracy because, as I said, the UN has been dishonest all through. First, by conducting 2 plebiscites, contrary to its own laws. Secondly, by keeping quiet when the resolution of the General Assembly of that very UN was not complied with. That resolution 1608 provided that Great Britain, the Republic of Cameroon, and the government of Southern Cameroons. There was a government, they say United Kingdom, not the government of United Kingdom, say United Kingdom, Republic of Cameroon, and the government of Southern Cameroons had to sit down and agree on what we commonly call today Union Treaty. And by section 1 article, some people call it article, some of us who are used to the English system call it section. Article 102 of the United Nations Charter required that when they had agreed and reduced the agreement into writing, into a union treaty, they had to deposit the agreement with the Secretariat of the United Nations. Until recently, from our research, if you go to the books of the United Nations membership, the name you see there is Cameroon, O-U-N.
That is Cameroon as written in the French language.
Cameroon, the Republic of Cameroon, east of the Mungu, not written in the French language. That is the Cameroon that is in the books of the UN as a member. Changes, if any changes came after September when Cameroon became a member, they ought to have reduced, because it's a very common thing. A small deal will tell you that administration is written, is not oral. Much less can you do something in international law orally, reduced into writing and deposited with the Secretariat of the United Nations. So that is the name that is there. And if the United Nations were honest, they would come out plainly and tell people that, look, the member state of the United Nations is Cameroon, which attained independence on the 1st of January 1960. Again, the African instrument of the African Union, OAU and then AU now, is also that your boundaries are the boundaries you had at the time of your independence. They've not said at the time of Southern Cameroon joining. No, at the time of your independence. Some people calling themselves lawyers will come and say, no, that's not binding. You cannot sign an international instrument or ratify an international instrument and say it is not binding. If you say it is not binding, then your constitution is not binding. Because your constitution, in the preamble, which is an integral part of the constitution, adopts those international instruments. The UN Charter, Declaration of Human Rights, the African Union, all those things are in the preamble of the constitution. And therefore, they are part of our law. That's the highest law at the national level. If the constitution is binding, then of course, those international instruments are binding. And then the constitution itself goes further to say that once an international instrument becomes part of our law through maybe ratification, that international instrument has a stronger force than the constitution itself. In legal jargon, we say that it prevails over the constitution. The constitution so provides. And if you have either signed or ratified those instruments, then of course you are bound by what is contained in those instruments.
I listened to Cardinal Toumé, one of the editions of the Insight, and he said to me he went to a meeting out of the country and an official from the French embassy came to me and said, Monsieur le Cardinal, vous êtes de quel pays? And when he answered and said Cameroon, the official from the French embassy said, nous sommes contents que vous êtes en train d'assimiler les anglophones. Are you saying that this is what is happening with this national dialogue?
Indeed, indeed. Because the United Nations has been dishonest in the treatment of the Southern Cameroonian case all along. Those very bodies you are calling supported the Swiss initiative for dialogue, call it anything. Swiss mediation, Swiss dialogue. All of a sudden they are supporting this. Are you going to have two dialogues in parallel lines, just to show you that the people make pronouncements at times without reflection, or they get overwhelmed by their interest, business interest, corruption. City Press has published without mincing words that the United Nations has never been as corrupt as it is now. All the things they say, they don't say them with any sense of justice. It's a matter of interest. As I'm telling you here now, tune to CNN, BBC, any news media. You hear British interest, American interest, French interest. They never talk about justice. They don't talk about the justice of the situation. They talk about interest. Whatever they do with their interest at the back of their minds. They can at times, because of false pretenses, make utterances. You think that they mean what they are saying. But at the back of their minds, it is in the protection of their interest. So, whether they support this national dialogue or not, it is part of the game. They would normally say so, because you would not tell me that. They are saying that we should follow the Swiss mediation. They came out, the same powers, the same bodies came out and supported. Then a few days after, they have backed out of that and they are supporting national dialogue. Yes. And they know that in national dialogue, there is no mediator. The two parties, one of the two parties cannot produce a mediator. And yet, where they have a neutral, let me call it impartial mediator, and what they approve, they have suddenly set aside to come and support what is of less, value. Look, for instance, which country has not called for dialogue in this present war? And for how many years? Did the government of Cameroon listen? Why do they think now, if we have a dialogue now, they will apply the resolutions? Did the government listen? And did we need to kill 3,000 people, 5,000 people, some 10,000, some are saying 10,000? People who are missing. I just published a post today of a woman who was taking care of 8 children in Ogoja camp. The United Nations did not bring them food for 3 months. She collapsed. Some of those children don't even know whether their parents are still alive. The woman, I said, does not even know their parents. So the figures we are giving, killed, doesn't represent the true situation. Did we need those who are supporting dialogue at this last end, better late than never? Did we need to kill so many people for dialogue to hold and hold on the terms of the government? One, an indivisible Cameroon, a constitution, decentralization, anybody who opposes it will be neutralized, and they are actually killing the people even as we are talking. They shot below me here last night. I mean, I was in the library, it was through Dutch courage that I had to read to the end what I was reading. Dialoguing under gun and fire.
Did you expect the President of the Republic to organize a dialogue out of the Constitution? He is expected to ensure the respect of the Constitution.
When he went into dialogue with Obasanjo in Nigeria, was it in accordance with the Constitution? Was there no international judgment? Was it not an international judgment? What is called Constitution? International law provides that when it comes to certain aspects of life, there's nothing called Constitution, there's nothing called sovereignty. The international community steps in without asking for your opinion.
We're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week.
The Post newspaper of Monday, September 16 reported a massacre in a cocoa farm in Mutengene that left the population in shock. The paper also touched the National Dialogue's theme. Eden, Bia's dialogue cuts open streams of unending proposals. The Sun said SDF posed tough preconditions as PM begins pre-dialogue consultation. Lugidion on the same dialogue said Bia may grant clemency to prisoners, but skeptics say dialogue will drown Anglophones. The Star said the United Nations, the EU, Commonwealth, the UN and ACAS have welcomed Bia's dialogue initiative. To the Guardian Post, cash-strapped Ambazonia leaders have threatened to abandon struggle. In another edition, the paper wonders a comedy of national dialogue as over 80% of those consulted are francophones. The media say pressure is being mounted on Bia to include jail Ambazonia leaders in the dialogue. On consultations for dialogue, the Rambler said saints and sinners have gone marching. A top British diplomat on the Voice newspaper wants an inclusive dialogue. Same diplomat with the same concern on the Post Weekender. The Guardian Post think national dialogue is Bia's big trap for PM John Guti. The paper in its weekend edition presented government's delegation on a tough mission to convince diaspora Ambazonia activists.
You're welcome back. Justice Ayapola Bine, former Member of Parliament, former Supreme Court Judge in the Republic of Cameroon. Earlier you talked about the Union Treaty. Somebody like Barrister Ashu Emmanuel Abo said to me, this meeting, the national dialogue, should go back to the roots and let a Union Treaty be established, and that is the only way this dialogue can produce the expected results. What do you think about that?
That's exactly what I've been saying all along. And such a dialogue cannot be at the level of Cameroon. The UN Resolution 1608 of 21st April 1961 spelled out the parties to the dialogue. That dialogue did not hold. I just call it dialogue. And the parties were United Kingdom, the Republic of Cameroon, and the government of Southern Cameroon. Any dialogue that does not bring these parties together to agree on a union treaty is null and void, because it will not be in accordance with the prescription of the United Nations. And the prescription of the United Nations are binding because it was a trust territory of the United Nations. Nothing can be done behind the back of the United Nations and it will not be valid. Much less can something be done at the level of Cameroon and it has any validity. In fact, it is null and void.
Why do you think that discussing the form of the state, discussing other issues linked to the Anglophone crisis, the Anglophone problem, will not be a way out of killings, the destruction going on in the Northwest, if there is no union treaty that is established in that meeting?
I have said, in the eyes of the law, there is no state called the Republic of Cameroon which includes the Republic of Cameroon east of the Mongo and southern Cameroons. In the eyes of the law, there is no such state. So if he's saying that the form of the state is non-negotiable, he's maybe talking about the Republic of Cameroon, which attained independence on the 1st of January 1961. Any other thing which includes southern Cameroons must necessarily involve international law. And as I've said, the United Nations, which had southern Cameroons as a trust territory, must be involved. If it is not, then it is not in compliance with the resolution I've been talking about all along. It must be involved. In other words, they can appoint an agent to represent the United Nations. Only then would the three parties come together. If two come together, it is not compliance with the terms of the resolution.
There's some school of thought, for instance, Christian Kadinotomi thinks that nobody should come from outside. We don't need anybody to come and solve this problem for us. We can solve it here. We don't need the United Nations, we don't need the European Union, we don't need America, we don't need France and whosoever. We can solve the problem here. If they are to come, they can just be observers and see us solve our own problems.
Kadinotomi is a priest. I don't know why he thinks that Rome, the Pope, has a say in the church here, but the UN cannot have a political say here. With much respect for him, I would simply say that he's not talking as a lawyer. It is not his domain. These things I'm talking about, that even the plebiscite itself, in the strict eye of international law, was null and void. Not to talk of our ever joining the Republic of Cameroon. You would need to know what I'm talking about. Even if we say that we can overlook the fact that the United Nations went against its own law by dividing British Cameroon, the trust territory, to Great Britain, into northern Cameroons and southern Cameroons. Let us forget about that. Maybe in the interest of peace, we'll come back to the fact that the resolution which granted us independence, which said we should join East Cameroon, was not complied with. That resolution was not done by Cameroon, or maybe the Archdiocese of Douala and whoever. It was done by the international community. Only they have jurisdiction to undo what they did in error. So when he says nobody should come from outside to where? To the Republic of Cameroon east of the Mungu, to southern Cameroon, that was a trust territory, and
there's only one Cameroon as of now.
Of course,
there's only one.
No, I know you as a journalist, maybe you're afraid of consequences. You can say that. Maybe non-legal experts can say that, but we of the law know that that is not the situation. We of the law. I heard a British member of parliament talking about a federation. It is they who caused all the confusion leading to the killings we are watching today. He talks as a non-expert in the law, but we are talking about the law. If anybody can come here and contradict these things I am saying legally, not somebody saying that, well, there's no union treaty, but Southern Cameroon was just like a small brother running into the arms of a big brother, that is the Republic of Cameroon. That is not law. That is, stories that can be told in the nursery schools. We talk within the law, as people thinking in the law, people knowledgeable in the law. And it is the law that brings about peace. It is the law that governs every aspect of life. If you want to marry, you must do this. If you want to build a house, you must make a plan. If you want to carry sand from the river, you must pay. If you want to do a quarry, every aspect of life, it is the law. If you want to drive in Cameroon, you must keep right. An administrator cannot come here today and say, no, even though that's the law, you should keep left. You see the confusion, the number of accidents we'll face. And it is because of that mentality that you find the President of the Republic driving from the 20th May Avenue back to his house. The roads are deserted. He gets to the roundabout near Bastos there. He takes left. That's a crime. And he says the example should come from up. And that's the example he's showing, that you should go left instead of going round about. Those are things that you ordinary people will call you laymen, not as an insult, but because you are not an expert in the law, and we have to tell you that this is how it has to be. Your liberty, your freedom ends where your neighbor's own begins. If there were absolute freedom, where, I mean, unlimited elasticity, in Kamer here, tolerance administrative, if there was something infinite elasticity in the law, then of course, on Munya Market Day on Sunday, just come here, you take your walking stick, you go into the crowd, you have the freedom to swing it. They will beat you, they may even kill you. But your freedom is limited. It ends where your neighbor's own begins.
Your freedom shouldn't be a nuisance to your neighbor.
Of course not.
All right, we're going to take some interviews now.
The citizens of the region are preparing to participate in the great national dialogue convened by President Paul Biya. The senior regional officers and the divisional officers should talk to the people so that each Cameroonian can contribute and give his own idea on how the dialogue will be carried out. But the most important thing is that people have to be constructive and that they should make useful suggestions, because the speech of President Paul Biya on the 10th of September was a very important speech and said everything. The terrorists in the bushes still have an opportunity to lay down their weapons and go to the GGR centers. And that is, and we are calling on them to make the act of contrition, and when they go to the GGR centers, which are vocational training centers, they will have their redemption. There can be no redemption without an act of contrition. And going to the GGR center, laying down your weapons, is another way of asking for pardon from the state. And that pardon has been granted at that level by President Paul Biya, who is asking these young Cameroonians who have been deceived by unpatriotic Cameroonians that they should lay down their weapons. For any innocent person who has been killed by the terrorists, those in the diaspora promoting terrorism will have to pay, and they will carry it on their consciences so long as they live on it. So they still have another opportunity to repent, because the President of the Republic has opened the door for dialogue. That they should come and repent, put down their weapons, and if they have any contributions to make, they have to make the contributions. But at the same time, the forces of law and order will continue to do their job. Because if you fall into any confrontation with the force of law and order, then they will have no choice but to arrest you and to send you to the judiciary for your activities, for you to respond. But they have to know that Cameroon is a very strong country, capable of self-defense. So there is no point saying that one day we will achieve things which cannot be achieved. The future of the Northwest region lies in the hands of President Paul Biya. And we assess the situation of this woman who was murdered, brutally murdered, and I think that the security services and the administrative authorities are taking precautions and stringent measures so that the true ones and the terrorists should be arrested and sent for justice.
I came here to extend the recommendation of the Prime Minister to the Northwest population. They were very happy to welcome the dialogue, and he instructed us to sensitize them and prepare them to attend that dialogue convened by the head of state by mobilizing all the sector of the population to go there. Like the head of state disclosed to the nation, not everybody is expected to go there. But those that are not going there should prepare themselves by putting in writing their contribution. Those that will be selected in their groupings will go there and represent the Northwest region. I therefore invited all the stakeholders of the region, beginning with those that were at the right beginning managing the crisis with us and government, to attend that meeting and to bring back the message to everybody and send to the administrative authorities that will channel it to us their proposals and the name of those they think them able to represent our region well in the upcoming dialogue.
Those who are in the bushes are not ghosts, they are human beings, and it has been proved that they are in contact with many people. Net-based facilitators use those contacts to bring them out, and that together we go for dialogue.
We told to the Prime Minister that through our alliance between UPC and CPDM, we are going to support the head of state in this national dialogue program, and that we are very happy to know that he decided to organize this national dialogue by taking into consideration the fact that it is a problem concerning Cameroonian, and that we don't need any other countries coming here to give us some instruction without taking into consideration the fact that we are an independent nation.
We tell the Prime Minister that UPC will participate to the dialogue, and then we have fine and good proposition and good suggestion for this dialogue, and we went issue by issue from the speech of the head of state, and then we have a response and solution from every issue. Now we want the dialogue to be sincere, in fraternity, and we want the Prime Minister to be firm and look for the peace, and we want him, we wish it good luck.
We just accompany the government initiative. They are the one to take this initiative. They are the one able to conclude peace. Therefore, all we can do is just to ease the job for the government and the Ambazonian. From the beginning, we said that we have two belligerents. Two belligerents have to come to an agreement. Once they come to an agreement, the peace is there. But both of them are concerned. So when we see them meeting together, we are happy and expect that it will lead to peace procedure.
We should also come into this dialogue with what I call intellectual honesty. When you are convinced that what the other person is saying is what is good for our nation, you have to bow down.
We said this meeting should not be like any other meeting where the discussions will be done and then thrown under the table. We said groups should be formed, commissions should be formed that will take action on the outcome of the dialogue, so that the decisions taken, the resolutions arrived at, can be implemented so that peace should reign in our country.
We started by giving assistance to close to 340 families, that is 1,950 persons. And you can see the joy. You can see the joy when you see people clapping. Is because I've instructed that those who did not have, that they should go and give it to them now. That is a clear proof that we were prepared for the exercise, and that President Paul Biya put in a lot of money so that we can assist the IDPs in the northwest, in the southwest, those in Bamenda, and those living in Bamfusa. So what I want to tell you is that the head of state has instructed that we should continue the distribution of humanitarian relief, and there's a second phase of the program which the head of state has instructed us to study. So after assistance, we will go for development, that is self-development. So we will permit the IDPs to do certain things. For instance, if you are a carpenter, we will assist you to acquire some equipment so that you can be self-reliant. It's very important. And you can see the IDPs, we have been helping them, it's close to 1 year. We have assisted more than 150,000 families nationwide, those in the 2 regions. That is close to 200,000 people who have who have received assistance from President Paul Biya. So we are just here to implement the policy of the head of state, give assistance to the local population, to the IDPs.
You're welcome back. Justice Ayapol Abini, have you been invited for the National Dialogue?
When I was released from captivity on the 31st of August 2017, I stayed in Yaoundé for a while. First week of October, I moved to Buea. And I've been in Buea here since then. I may have spent some 3-4 days out of Buea for 1 or 2 things. Otherwise, I go to where I want and come back the same day. Everybody knows where I am. The governor here knows. Nobody has given me even an idea as to whether I'm invited or not.
The governor organized some consultations.
Just a few days, 2 days ago, I was here. I was sitting here in my house just 2 days ago. I only I only watched Equinox, which is so dynamic. I thank you for the good work you were doing. I only watched on Equinox. So since I came here, first week of October, I've been here. The government spokesman warned all of you that whoever interviews Paul Aya will be prosecuted for they're doing what with secessionists or whatever.
If you were invited, will you go for the consultations, for the dialogue itself?
You know, most often we in the law don't prejudge. If the invitation came, I pray over it and take a decision. I had said, even as we're talking here now, that to me that is a non-event. But I could still go there and talk to them face to face. First, they make it impossible for me to leave. The whole world knows that the government is owing me arrears of rent for 17 months. They paid part of it when I came out of captivity. The rest is here. They had the instruments there, the decrees. Instead of calculating my arrears on index 1,400, they chose their own. I don't know which decree they were using. In 10 days' time, I'm going to enter the 13th month without a franc of my pension.
What explains this?
You see, the fight of the government of Cameroon is one side, and on the other side is Paul Aya.
Why? Is Paul Aya a threat?
God alone knows. Maybe because I know certain things. You remember that in 2011, the man that we had known all along, 20 how many years, as Paul Biya suddenly changed his name to Biya Paul so that he should be side by side with Paul Aya. And that's how they fought me till today. A few months back, my American Jeep, one of my brothers bought it in Holland, directly in my name and sent here. American Ford Explorer. Was in Yaoundé while I moved to Buea. Trying to look for me since they've held my salary, they've grounded me. There's a terrible financial crunch. I could not bring it. 3 people came with a hauler, 2 in police uniform, 1 in military uniform. They used a crane, took my Jeep, put on the hauler, and drove it away. We've been to all the councils in Yaoundé, it is not there. Just to show you the fight against a certain Paul Aya.
What have you done about this? What have you done about the problem, your salary, the attacks against you?
What can I do? Today they will tell me I should bring so. I bring. The next day it's either it's not found in the file or I should wait till June. I wait. June they tell me now June and July is only for signatures. I don't know how many millions of signatures. So you have calculated my arrears of salary. It was a miscalculation. Do I need to give you anything again? You just know that it was a material, mistake. Or I should bring this and that you will bring. I've sent papers for my pension, I think at least 3 times. At one time I took myself in February this year to Yaoundé. God alone knows what they want. The unfortunate thing for them is that I believe in God. And even my appearance, I keep this beard just for fun and for reasons known only to me for now. Otherwise, I am growing younger instead. In spite of all the fight, recently, a minister established a list of 5 people to be killed in Buea, and my name was either number 2 or 3. It's not a secret. It was published on the media.
You have proof that your name is on the list of...
My name is there. Some people that sent us, messages. The name is there.
Would you attend the consultation?
If they want me to attend, they should look for my Jeep in Yaoundé and send it to me. Send my arrears of salary and pension, so that I drive in a car I trust. I drive with a driver I trust. Only yesterday, here 11 people or so died in an accident. I try as much as possible to drive to the best of my ability. It's not just a matter of inviting. Even if they served me a written invitation, they will still have to make it possible for me to travel to Yaoundé.
Justice Ayapol Abini, before we end this program, I wanted to look at this camera and speak to the President of the Republic concerning this national dialogue and this reform crisis.
There is nothing that Mr. President can do which will resolve this problem once and for all. There's nothing Mr. President will do which will give us a lasting solution. There's nothing the President can do which will end this war without a recurrence until we sit at the table as 2 states, the Republic of Cameroon and Southern Cameroons, with the other stakeholders and agree either to go on as one country or go our separate ways. I know that the population and the land mass count in the power of a country. If we're a bigger state in surface area, big in population, we just rise like China yesterday, like India. So it is not a matter of having small states, powerless states, but it's a matter of following the law so that people should stay together because they want, not because somebody wants to use force of arm to compel them to be together. Mr. President, if you want to leave Cameroon the same way as President Ahidjo left it to you, take to my advice.
Justice Ayapol Abini, former member of the lower house of Cameroon's parliament and of course former Supreme Court judge, equally a legal mind. Thank you for your time.
We thank God for everything. He's keeping me, as I've just told you, the way I am. In spite of all the hurdles, look at the way I am.
See you next Sunday. Thanks for staying with us.